Welcome to this first free webinar organized by ECCRT on how to reduce time between site selection and first patient in. Before starting, I would like to present myself. And I will even put the camera so you see me as well. It is coming. My name is Nelle Stockard, and I'm initially a biochemist, and worked several years in a lab. And then I decided to move to the clinical research world in 2003, where I started as IRIS project manager. I was then setting up the randomization for studies and sorry for the message that appeared, and also the drug supply for the studies. So I really learned a lot. What is a study, but also how important is the randomization, how important is the drug supply. So it was very interesting job, but I missed the scientific part of the job because it was quite technical. So I moved to more on the field job, and I became a CRA for Parexel. Where I worked several years, and I really learned everything because I really had to do everything by myself because we were a quite small team at that time. And I did everything from feasibility until close out, even preparing package for ethics committees and competent authorities submission, discussing with them, obtaining approval, etc. So it was very interesting. I really like it. And after a certain time, I had the opportunity to move to more a project manager role at GlaxoSmithKline, where I first managed partially a phase 2 and a phase 3 trial as a junior project manager, and then finally managing alone the phase 2 trial is still partially the phase 3 trial. And then they asked me to take over the trial from phase 3 at the time of the database lock. That was very interesting, very challenging, very stressful also, and I learned a lot. But at a certain time point, I had to choose between my family and my job, and then I chose my family and I moved to something a little bit more calm, still stressful, but better regarding work-life balance. And I moved to a local project manager role at Servier, French-known pharmaceutical company, mid-sized company, where I was a local project manager, where I managed studies for Belgium and Netherlands. That was very nice. I really like it. Unfortunately, they had some sales issue and they had to cut the budget for the studies, and last in, first out. So I had to find another job, and I became again a global project leader for Comsource, who is a mid-size CRO. But at that time, I met my actual boss, who asked me to become a trainer, and that was very interesting because this is something I had in my mind since a long time. Because of course, being a trainer or it's what you are doing, in fact, when you are a project manager or a CRA. So finally, I took over this challenge, and I'm now a trainer since 3.5 years for ECCRT. Beside that, of course, I'm human, and what I like to do is gardening, reading books when I have time, and going outside for a run, because this is something that helped me to not being too stressed. That's how I wanted to explain you regarding what I'm doing, who am I. Now I would like to know a little bit more about you, but before that, I will close the camera. So what I will ask you is for which type of companies you are working for. So are you working for a CRO, a pharmaceutical company, a biotech, academic organization, or medical device company? So let's go. So now you can vote. Okay. Close. Sure. So as you can see, it's mainly CROs, and then we have a pharmaceutical company. There's still a lot of academic. Thank you for that. That's very interesting for me to know. And let's continue. I have another question for you. What do you think? Increasing the number of sites will increase the recruitment rate? Is it yes, no, or somewhat? So I will launch the poll. let's go. You can vote. Okay, let's see. What is your answers? So it's somewhat, yeah, you are not really sure that it will increase or not, but we still have quite people thinking that it's yes. So in fact, the answer, it is not. It's not really increasing the enrollment rate. Here you have the graph you can see on the right is a graph regarding hematology studies, sorry for that, over 10 years, and they look at how is the number of patients per site per month with more sites included. And as you can see, you quite fast reach a plateau where you have around 0.13 patient per site per month. So which means that in fact you have really a clear pattern that the number of site activities is related to the number of patients enrolled per site per month. So you finally achieve a plateau, which is important to keep in mind. That's after a certain time point, there is no need to increase more the number of sites because finally you will not increase your enrollment. And this is also the numbers that you can see here on this graph. And because here you can see they looked at more than 1,000 of studies between different diseases with more than 10 sites activated, and they looked at the number of sites that can be activated, so 50 sites within 100 days. So, and you can see that for smaller studies, they achieved to activate these number of sites, so 50 sites, in 6% only on this site, the studies were able to make it. So it's really few. And now if we look at larger studies with more sites, they were able to activate 50 sites in 100 days. Only 20% of the studies were able to make it. So it means that really to have your enrollment increasing is not increasing the number of sites that is important, but it's really finding the right balance. So finding where you are when you arrive to this plateau. So that's the most important thing. And this is also what you can see when you look over time, how fast you can activate the site or not. So that's very important to keep in mind. Indeed, you are quite limited to the number of sites you can activate in a certain time point because you have some operational boundaries like the number of resources you have available to be able to activate this site, but also the supplies team, are they able to send enough treatment on the social timelines, etc. So that's important to keep in mind that activating a lot of sites will have an impact on the number of patients per site per month, but also on the the speed you can activate this number of sites. So how to define then the right number of sites to be activated? How to define it well? So first, of course, analyzing previous data from similar studies. So as I just showed you, but also you can look at historical data within your organization, or if you work with a CRO, what is the historical data with the CRO, or the opposite? If you work for a CRO, what is the historical data from the sponsor? But also on a public database like you have on clinicaltrial.gov, for example, that can give you a good idea about that. But surely do not define the number of sites with a simple multiplication from the number of sites you have activated for phase 2 and phase 1 trials. Indeed, if you had 12 sites for 100 patients in your phase 2 trial, don't expect to have 120 sites activated for 1,000 patients. That doesn't work. It is not a good way of working. Now, to define it better and defining the number of sites you need to do a good feasibility also. So good feasibility means also looking at the disease prevalence to define the good countries to go to, but also good feasibility means applying the quality by design principles. So really looking at first what are your critical data and processes to demonstrate what you want to demonstrate with your study. And then based on that, going to the different countries, looking at what is the standard of care, what are the previous treatment provided to the patient population you want to target, is it manageable with your inclusion exclusion criteria, but also is it manageable on technical point of view? Do they have the all techniques in place to make it, and to better define also the number of sites based off the potential recruitment rate in the different countries. Now, you also have to define a maximum number of sites you are able to activate in a certain time frame, so 1 week or 1 month, based on the resource available you have, not only your series, but also all the support team you need, and having the supply on site on time also. And last but not least, with all this data, try to make simulation with your statistician. There will be really good advice based on all these data to find the right number of sites to be activated. Now let's have another quiz. I would like to know from you how long you think it takes to have a site activated from the site identification. So I will launch the polls. Let's go. So between 5 to 10 weeks, 10 to 15 weeks, 15 to 20 weeks, 20 to 25 weeks, or more than 25 weeks. So you continue to vote. That's interesting to see. Okay. Let's see. What do you think? It's so as you can see, you said mainly 15 to 20 weeks or 20 to 25 weeks. In fact, you are not really correct. I will show you the numbers. So here is the numbers. So this is the numbers coming from a Tufts survey done in 2017. And you can see that if the site is already known, servers are taking up to 20 weeks to have the site activated, and you can achieve up to 39 weeks in average for sponsor for a site that they never worked with. So mainly we are most of the time above 20 weeks and even 25 weeks to have a site activated, which is really a lot. And as you can see, zeros are faster than sponsor. Now let's look at this data more deeply. So here is more in details information about what I've showed you, still from the Tufts report. As you can see, the time to have the site identified is between 2 to 7 weeks between the zero and the sponsor. Of course, it's faster when the site is already known. This is the blue bar, and you can see that the zero are faster. And for the site selection, so not only identification but selection, you still have to add between 5 to 8 weeks in total to have the site selected. Why it's taking so much time is because, of course, organizations are contacting a lot of sites before selecting them. And zeros are used to contact up to 20 times more sites than the ones needed finally. So, and in the Tufts survey, one of the zero also mentioned that in fact, they contacted 266 sites to have 12 sites selected finally. You see, it's very, very a lot. So that's important to keep in mind. And that's why it's so long also, it's taking so much time, is because you need to contact a lot of sites. But from the site selection until your site can start, you can see that having the site starting is still taking a lot of time, because it's taking between 14 or even 15 weeks to 24 weeks, which is really a lot. And as you can see, and as I already mentioned, across all tasks, zeros are faster than sponsor. Why? Because mainly they already invest a lot in new technologies, and they are using more a transversal way of working than sponsors. So that's the reason why. But anyway, when we look at that, we can see that this process must be improved to go faster, that's for sure, because it has a big impact on the whole clinical trial life cycle. So now what I wanted also to show you regarding number from Tufts is that, in fact, you have, they looked at the how is the impact on the different function working on it. So if the study startup system is done centrally, or if it's done, if the process is held locally, so non-centralized one, and if one of the two systems is more efficient than the other. And if we can see, again, zero is faster, but you can see that centralized is a bit longer than non-centralized, but in fact these numbers are not statistically significant. So it means there is no real difference in between, except that the sponsor is still longer than the zeros. So now, how to identify new potential sites, because we have seen it's quite time-consuming process, and how to ensure that you find a good site, so meaning the one that will provide you the number of patients you need. First, of course, going to the clinicaltrials.gov or EDVAC-CT database, and Sightline is one that you need to pay for to have access to. But these are databases collecting a lot of information about previous studies, so it's important to check these database to verify what type of studies are running, what type of investigators and sites are involved in, and how they work, also what is their performance. Now, what you can do also, of course, is to work with site networks as pathology-related networks like breast international groups, for example. These are good networks because they work often together, they know well each other, they have a kind of contract templates to fasten the process, but also they are used to make studies and to submit these studies, so they know what are the bottlenecks, so they are quite efficient regarding these startup activities and can be quite helpful also regarding pool of patients. Now, what you can do also is to look at the activity of the site you want to work with in the community. So I mean healthcare community and community related to it, so patients community. What I mean by healthcare community, are they participating to some lunch and learn initiative to, for example, make more awareness about clinical trials, or what are the really activities regarding clinical trials, what are the activities regarding the disease. So it's important to check. Now, regarding community related to it, like patient community, it's important to check how they work with the different patient groups. You have patient groups for different disease, but also patient advocacy group, because it's important to look at the relationship they have, because it can create more trust on this site than others, but also providing quite large pool of patients afterwards. So it's important to check it. Now, you can also check the social networks like Inspire, who is a mix of healthcare professionals and patients discussing all together. So it could be helpful to see if they are quite active there, because again, it can create awareness about this site and provide more patients to this site. And of course, you have other possibilities, but I wanted to just list some of them that can give you some idea of better identified sites. Now, how to improve the process? First, what is the bottleneck of this process? First, of course, feasibility needs to be improved, and feasibility often is still manually done. So I mean, we are using still manual feasibility questionnaires that are sent to the PI, so to the investigators, by emails, and then collecting the data from them is still manually and entered in specific trackers. Everybody has its own trackers. There is no sharing of trackers. That's difficult. So it's still very manually, and then time consuming. Moreover, you don't have real time data, so it can also delay the start of your study. Moreover, we are working with several functions all together. Of course, you have the project manager, but you have other departments working with you. You have regulatory, legal, trial master file owner. So you have a lot of different people that have to work together, and all of them have their own tools with disparate information. So having, again, a global overview and ensuring that everybody is aligned is difficult and is time consuming. And that's the reason why this process is so long also. So it's important to have a better sharing of information, better tools, ensure that everybody is using the same tool. And that's really one of the bottlenecks. So one more question for you. I will ask you how long, so if you think that the cycle time to have your site starting has a direct relationship with the time to have your recruitment completed. So yes or not. So let's go, I will launch the poll, okay. Okay, I still need some votes, but we are almost there. But mainly, you said all yes. Okay, close. So as you can see, 81% of you said yes. So indeed, you're right. It is yes. I will show you. Here you can see you have a graph that has been done with the studies start to site activation, how long it takes versus the how long it takes to have the enrollment completed. And you can see you have really a linear relationship. So which means that site activation accounts for about 70% of enrollment period. So which is very important to keep in mind, because longer you will take to activate your sites, longer will be your recruitment. So and we all know that recruitment is a big issue in clinical trials. We always struggle to have all patients recruited, but first we need to start with a better process to have our site activated. So first, I was speaking about what is site activation. I spoke about it, but what it is exactly. But of course, I'm sure you all know it. It's first obtaining all documents to be able to obtain finally the approval from ethics committees and competent authorities, which take time to have all these documents ready. So not only collecting, but adapting to the different countries and site. Negotiate the financial contract with the site could be very time consuming. Providing supply to sites, having everything ready for them, so ethics committees and competent authorities approval, but this contract signed and all ready to be sent to site. And of course, obtaining all the other documents you need for that also, like CV and financial disclosure form, etc. So it's time consuming. And again, it's done by several people, not only one person. So what is the Tufts survey conclusion? So from the ones done last year, sponsor SRO are using in average 30% of new sites for phase 2 and phase 3 trials. And we have seen that it's important to keep in mind, because these are the sites that are taking longer to be activated and quite more long. So it's important to keep it in mind. And to go faster, there is clearly a need to invest in technology as CTMS and an electronic trimaster file, avoiding to have each time its own trackers and not sharing trackers, etc. Global system is important, and this system can really can be really useful. Moreover, the companies that were the fastest were the smaller one and CROs mainly. Smaller, why? Again, because they work more transversally. You don't have so big silos as larger companies. I work in both, and surely when you have a larger companies, you have more silos because people have the tendency to stay in their department. And that's the reason why now we have the risk-based monitoring, but this should be applied also for the startup of the study. These companies that are faster don't have specifically more centralized or decentralized groups to make these startup activities. So there is no conclusion to have from that. But these companies said clearly that they don't have the intention to invest more in technologies because they were happy with the one they have. So which means they already clearly invest in these technology. So that's really the lessons learned is technology is important. So what is time consuming? Just a summary: collecting essential documents for submission, prepare the submission package, adapting to local requirements, the shipments of the study drug or your medical device if it's medical device, and other supplies needed for the studies, and could be comparators, could be other specific supplies, and contract negotiation. We all know that it's taking a lot of time. So that's very important. And how to improve then this process and all these collection of documents and all these steps. First, if your site is already known, then when was the last contact? Okay, when we worked the last time with them, and what about their past performance? Was it a good recruiter or not? Because if it was not a good recruiter, or you had quality issue with this site, is it really interesting to invest again in this site? That's important to define. And if you already work with them, what are the documents you have already in-house? Because is it really needed to recollect again and again the same documents we already have in-house, like CV, financial disclosure form, etc.? Of course, it depends when was the last contact. That's why you need to check it first. And what is known about the contract negotiation and requirements at this site, how long it takes, what was the specific requirements. As such, you can already prepare better the site negotiation with the contract negotiation with them, preparing a good template for them, and the discussion can go faster. Again, the same idea for ethics committee's requirement. What was the requirements to ensure that you adapt already properly all the documents for them. Now, if it's a sign already known by the sponsor but not yet by the CRO, ensure that these information are shared and defining what are already the documents available in-house as a sponsor to be provided to the CRO. The opposite now, if the site is already known by the CRO but not yet by the sponsor, ensure that the sponsor agree that the same documents can be used again, providing this information about past performance, all the information about contract negotiation, depending who is doing the contract negotiation, it's important to share it. So we'll discuss it already, having this sharing of information. So I said we have to avoid to work in silo, not only within your organization, but between organizations as well. And of course, ask for past experience and performance to ensure you choose the proper site for your study. As such, you will avoid site frustration by asking always the same documents all the time. And if you ask them, they will complain about that. And it will increase your chance of success because you will have more motivated site and you will have an analysis already of the past performance. So the site you will choose will be a better one. Now, if it's a new site, it's more difficult, of course, to know all this information. What you can check anyway is the past performance of this site on the public database available, that's for sure. And then before your qualification visit or before your selection visit, before you go to site, ensure that when you leave it, you have the contact detail of the contract negotiation people, because it's important. Also discuss with the site what is the usual timelines to have a contract signed, but also what are the bottlenecks in the negotiation, because most of the time they know where you have to pay attention, what is important to put in the contract, what will be a question of discussion. But also you can ask them what is the structure of the contract. Do you need one contract for the site with annex for the different departments, or one per department? So it's important to define it. Also, before the visit, it's important to make a list of essential documents you need. We all know which one is it. Send it already to the site upfront with timelines upfront to have it, and try to collect them already during the visit. And if not, really give strict timelines to be sure that you can start the submission process faster. I'm sure you all know that, but it's good to repeat it. Now, how to really improve the site activation process is, as I said, you have to more use the electronic solutions we have for the time being. That's very important. First, using the investigator performance database you have in-house, so either at the sponsor, either at the CRO, or sharing the information between both, depending who has the information. Ensure that your team are looking at this database, but also ensure they look at the other database, public database like clinicaltrial.conf, ECCRT, etc. It can be really helpful. Now, try to have more electronic feasibility system in place. That's really working better. Some provider have such kind of system in place that are linked to the CTMS, but if not, you can use, for example, SurveyMonkey, because then you have a central way of sending the questionnaires and central way to collecting the data, and you have easy reports to download. So I really encourage you to use that instead of sending documents that must be completed and then having the data entry to be done, etc. It is faster. Having an electronic trial master file is really helpful because you can create artifacts already in it with the documents that will be needed, which one we have already from the other studies, for example, also with alerts to be created, and also with to-do lists and checklists for people, for IP release checklist, or to-do list for specific functions also can be very useful, and you have a better central way of working regarding the documents you need. Now, beside that, you still need to have a document sharing process with your trackers sharing. Of course, CTMS is a good way to do it because you have everything in it. If you don't have ETMS, try to have a SharePoint where you can really share all documents, and really encourage people to share it globally and not keep it for their own. Also, building a strong relationship with site is good. It's very important because they are the final actors. Finally, it's the key actors. So you have to build it from the very beginning until the end, of course. And by not asking all the time the same documents is already good. Of course, it's improved that. So really try to use the technology you have available and work more transversely between the different functions. You really have to break the silos. So to summarize what we have seen today, first, of course, site selection and activation are key process in the study life cycles, and we have seen this is directly related to the enrollment completion timelines. So very important to try to make it more efficient. Better use your technologies, what you have in-house, but also try to adapt it to the new way of working and the data you have available. Most of the time we don't use it or not enough. Try to work better cross-functionally, so more transversally, and in a more efficient way. How to be more efficient? By looking at your process. So first, what you could do, for example, is analyzing your process. So the whole startup process from feasibility until site activation, and looking at who is responsible, looking at roles and responsibilities, defining how long it takes for each step, what are the bottlenecks, where you can improve and how to improve, and then adapt your process. I think it's very important. Some companies have done it. Novartis just published a white paper regarding that, how they improve this process, and they really improve it by 10 times. So instead of having 50 weeks to have a site activity, they became to 5 weeks. So it's really important to do it. Now, what are the next steps for us? If you want to learn more about how to improve your study startup processes, here it was very short, very to the point, and study management skills, you are more than welcome in our next Advanced PM course on the 5th and 6th November. We have other sessions also planned in 2019 if you are not available at that time. Now, anyway, the recording of this webinar will be available from the 11th of October on our website. And you will receive an online feedback survey because it's the first time we organize this webinar. So we would like to be sure that we met your requirements and your expectations. But also it's a good moment for you to reflect about what you have learned today. What was the key message for you? So, and that would be very useful as well for you. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact us on info@ECCRT.com. And here you can see the coming courses in November. We still have other courses also in December. So if one of them is interesting for you, don't hesitate to contact us. So I would like to thank you for all your attention. Here is the address of our website where you can find also information. And I hope to see you in my course very soon.